4 or 5 people on our party line, and you can pick up the receiver and listen to the neighbors. And
8-3.
My dad's office number was 2. We're ready.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Community Development Advisory Board. Roll call can be taken by those present. Our next order of business is approval of the minutes from the March meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
yes,
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
I second.
A motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is the public hearing, number 2, for the Community Development Block Grant and for the proposed funding of the action plan for 2018 and 19. Is there any comments from staff?
Yes, I wanted to discuss demolitions with the board. Michelle, would you like to do it?
She just
Okay, great, thanks. I'd like to discuss demolitions with the board. I did talk to my boss, who is the city planner, and she discussed it with the city manager. They feel like they would like demolitions to remain within CDBG, and here's the reason why. There's a couple. First of all, demolitions and getting rid of blight in community has become major thrust for the city. That so being, the city has put up some of their own budget funds to be added to the CDBG funds to be able to combat that. This is the first year that they have done that. So they're trying to actually beef up the number of demolitions that we would do to get some of the structures out of the community that are causing problems. They see it as a way to prevent neighborhood issues. Sometimes people get in those houses that shouldn't be there. They do things that they shouldn't do. It makes problems for the neighborhood. It makes problems for those living around them. And if the owners of those properties no longer feel compelling need to keep that property up, then the city steps in and takes the house down so that they can just maintain the lot. It's expensive for the city to maintain the lot for the property. So, and then the last thing is that the board is an advisory board. So if you send it to the commission without demolitions, then the advisory board might draw that money back out, maybe in categories other than what we had originally designated. So they do have that option. From staff perspective, we currently aren't using all of our home ownership or home repair monies, that it is a problem to be able to fund the demolitions from the grant. So I see us as going forward in this way. The other reason is that we have already advertised that we were going to put money towards blight removal. And if we wanted to change that, then we'd have to start back over with the public hearings to amend. So it would be my recommendation that we leave that in, but that is something that the board can discuss.
Does anybody on the board have any questions, concerns?
So right now, it's still in the budget, the demolition.
It is.
How much of the budget is used for demolition?
We can use up to 30% of the budget toward demolition. So
Right.
at this point, we use up to that amount.
And so we would just carry on with using that amount?
Well, at this point, we have. If we want to discuss it next year, we can certainly discuss lowering that. But again, like I said, the commission may decide to raise it back up to 30% because they see that as a major issue for them to address.
So do I. I think that's a huge issue for Leavenworth.
Yeah, so So we have a couple of caps that we're under federal guidelines for. One is public service agencies at 15% of the total grant. The other one is administration at 20% of the total grant. And then of the remaining amount of funds that are there, those funds that serve low, moderate income people must be 70% of what we spend. So we allocate approximately 30% toward. It's a little bit less because of you take the demolition out. They have a math formula, and you take the demolition out and so forth. But it's about 30%.
So does the city commission allocate any money for demolition?
The city commission this year allocated $35,000, and we designated 50.
50,000?
So what, like, let's just use an example of a home. We have plenty of those that need to be demolished in Leavenworth. Approximately how much is that cost?
It ranges on the size
Sure.
and also the number of floors, but they range between, I'd say, $7,000 and $12,000 per each.
So really, it's only up to, if there's $85,000 for demolition, we're only looking at
Like 7.
7 or 8 structures, correct? Not even,
Yeah.
if we're lucky.
Yep. It's not a lot allocated toward demolition.
No.
But again, you don't want to necessarily take the money away from the other things
Sure.
either. So
It is a need, though. What, the apartment, there was a small apartment building that was, I remember you telling us about that in the fall. Wasn't there a small,
yes,
And it-
we took, was it on Potawatomi? Yeah. 726 through 730 Potawatomi.
and so a building like that, how much of the budget did that take?
I don't remember.
Chunk?
Much
That'd be
bigger.
the upper 12 to
Yeah.
maybe 15.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was a bigger chunk.
Because, yeah,
Um,
it's a multiple.
Yeah, and then, when the units are that close together, then there's other regulations we have to do in terms of looking at environmental issues. So we had to do, it won't make a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
a tier 1, which was just, let me just say it was this thick.
What about if there was asbestos in those? Does it cost more then? Do they have to do something with all that asbestos that's in those older houses?
Almost every house has some kind of asbestos. Whether or not they have to address it depends on where it's contained. But we always do an asbestos inspection on those properties, and then those contractors are to address that because the state has a process. You have to take it off or take it out ahead of time for the demolition, and it makes sense for them as well because right now, you have 2 different kinds of dumps, those that do hazardous waste and those that don't, and the ones that do hazardous waste cost significantly more, so really the contractors, even some of the contractors want you to do the asbestos inspection so that they can narrow down how much has to go to the expensive dump. So, but it makes sense. It makes sense, and it's appropriate to handle it correctly, so we try to do that. Yep.
I'd like to ask a question. First, I'd like to apologize to everybody here. There were some cars tangled up in 10th Avenue or 10th Street over there, which I come out of. But anyway, do we have a rate that we know how many, or the number of buildings that need to be demolished? Is the rate increasing or does it stay about the same? Because the city is slowly growing and more people are showing up, so we've got a problem.
It would be my guess that we are still catching up from some of the foreclosures in 2008-9 on some of the smaller homes that are in the community. I think more of the demolitions are probably in the northern quadrant, if you were just doing a divider line, but we also have some south as well that we're doing. And what the code enforcement, I pick up activities, or CDBG picks up activities after the code enforcement officers determine what properties might need to be demolished. So the code enforcement officers are out every day, they look at those things, they get reports from neighbors that, you know, there might be squatters in a house, or, you know, something that indicates that. We'll check on how long the water's been off in those properties. That gives us a good indication of when the last owner was in there. And some of them that we're looking at, the water's been off for, you know, 7, 8 years. So that's a long time. And that means that that property has probably been abandoned. You know, if somebody hasn't maintained it in that kind of a length of time, because that means no running water, no electricity, those kinds of things. They aren't doing anything to maintain or preserve the property in general.
It's kind of the conflict is if we build it, people will come. If we don't build it and it falls apart, we're still paying on both sides.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. The idea is to try and limit how much the city, because if people don't cut their grass, of course, we have ordinances for that, because we have a lot of rentals in town, so we have grass length ordinances, and if people call, then the city goes out. If it's too long, we'll send a letter, and they have 7 to 10 days, isn't that right, Michelle? 7 to 10 days to take care of it. If they don't take care of it, then we take care of it. After we've done that for a while, then probably it's time to cut our losses.
Okay, I didn't want to debate, you know,
Yeah.
get us off the main road here. but-
I wanted to talk about it because at our last meeting, we discussed whether or not we wanted to fund demolitions.
Right.
And I wanted to bring back an answer, and I said I would, so I did.
Okay.
So, with that being said, I have no further comments to add, except that if you've looked at the draft, we're funding basically the same activities that we did last year at the same levels, because we haven't found out what our award is yet this year again. So we'll be funding home rehabilitation or home repair, home ownership, demolition of dangerous or blighted structures, public service agencies, and admin costs.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the board?
We probably need a motion to close the
Okay.
public hearing.
Do I need to be a vote in motion, or can I just close the public
just
hearing?
close the
Okay.
public hearing.
At this time, I close the public hearing, and we're moving to vote to submit the 2018 and 19 annual action plan for the CDBG to the City Commission for approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
Like I said, I thought it was very well done. I read through this several times. Each time I found something that I missed the first time through, so I thought it was pretty well done. It seems like it covered an awful lot of ground.
Thank you.
My motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the action plan as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's see, moves us to our next step, to review the aggregate agency scores and finalize the allocation of funds within the public service agency or public service category. Complicated as we are.
Okay, so this is a new process for the board to look at the scores that I took all of the scores from each of you and aggregated them together for a lump sum total for each agency. I have them listed there on the sheet. It's a short list. And I thought that that might be helpful in the discussion of how we're going to handle funding. Ultimately, this is a board decision on how to divide the $5,777. And so you can either determine how you want to spend it, or we can discuss it as we go forward. Or you can direct me to do some kind of magical math.
So do we have any input from the board?
For the dollar amounts?
Well,
I mean, so,
this is always a complicated part of our process.
It's,
well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the Faith Christian Center, we are not going to fund,
Right.
right? So that's out. So that leaves us with 7.
how do you all feel about the guidance?
See,
What's the concern?
well,
Can't,
The
They-
concern with the Guidance Center application was that the Guidance Center applied for money to
Pay a mortgage.
pay their debt,
yeah,
rather than, pay on their debt, rather than money for rent or utilities.
That's what the grant is for,
There's
is the rent or utilities.
Well, and rent and utilities is the way we have evolved over the years. And we're not really stuck to that. But it was just a deciding factor we've picked up through the years. I think the Guidance Center does some good work, and if their funding's being cut, I'd like to help them.
when we talk about mental health services, that's
yeah.
about the only thing we have here in Leavenworth, especially for our kids.
So they would have to change their application to use it for rent, or,
We would probably have to go back to the Guidance Center with a letter saying we would be willing to provide you X number of dollars in utility assistance.
Yeah.
And then they would have to divert that money over to their debt relief, because we have said that it would be for utilities and rent. So if you wanted to do that, we're welcome to do that. We just have to decide how we're going to do that.
Just like that.
Huh?
Just like you said,
Just like, okay.
divert the money.
Okay, well then, if we are going to do that, then yes, you have 7 that you are considering. And so what I think you would like to do, although you can tell me if you would like to do it differently, is maybe start at those that got the higher scores and decide how much out of their request you would like to meet, and work your way down the list until we've gotten to no money.
So CASA had,
So,
CASA had a favorable
So CASA-
application in everybody's eyes.
CASA had a favorable application in everyone's eyes. So if you wanted to award them the full amount that they requested, then that would be $15,500. If you want to award them some portion of that, you can do that.
well, I think, because we did say too, they took on new programs and they're getting more applications for children in need. And so I think that they're the one thing that's grown. Some of their service, some of the other ones, services like the mission has decreased over the year, but CASA has increased.
So would somebody like to state what they'd like to see done, and maybe you could vote on each one individually as we go?
well, I think we can make a recommendation, and then can we go back and change it if we go back all the way down to the bottom
Yeah.
and there's nothing
Right.
there, and we want to give something to the Guidance Center?
Okay, so let's go ahead and start with CASA and your recommendation.
That's what I would start going through here and seeing where you can move it from one to the other. It's pretty tight.
Well,
if we do 15,000, we're not able to.
what if we did, what if we
12,500.
started with
10?
12.5 or 10.5 or something like that?
Meet them halfway from what we funded last year, is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
What did we
Up-
fund last?
Yeah.
Well, I think it should go up a little bit because.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So at least
instead of
10,
9,100, do 12?
Yeah, we could do that.
do 12?
That puts it squarely in the middle of or not squarely, but right about squarely.
Okay.
So that leaves with
It's a technical term.
30.
Right about squarely is a technical term. Okay, so 12,500 there,
Good round number.
12,000 even?
12,500?
12,500.
That's a good start number till we can
12,500.
So then the next one on the list is
Catholic Charities.
Catholic
Catholic
Charity.
Charities. They, last year got $4,911. They asked for $5,000. Can we award the full five?
I think
Yes.
we can.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so that's $5,000. Okay, the next one on the list is
And Women's Y.
the Women's Y. They requested $2,000, full request.
I think we can go 2,000, yeah.
Okay, so $2,000.
St. Vincent's Clinic.
St. Vincent's Clinic, they requested they got awarded last year $6,981. They requested $9,000.
But their current number is down, right?
Right.
Well, that's July through wait,
That's July
That's just half
through
the year.
January.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's
Half the year.
So,
They would-
I think that their number will
at
They
least,
stay pretty steady.
yeah.
stay pretty.
7,500?
Again, meet them halfway until we can make some,
I would say 8,000.
8,000 even?
Yeah.
8,000?
Another one, we have such
How's
a
that
need.
gonna-
Medical.
What's our total balance left?
25.
Well,
It's fun to play with
20
Monopoly money.
27.5 so far, I think.
Okay.
I hit on most of them.
Are you at 27.5?
I've got 27 even. What would you put the 5 on?
27.5.
27.5.
Oh, 12.5. Okay,
So it's 27.5 at this point.
Okay.
that's good.
So 45.
The next one on the list is
The mission.
and we have a contract with Welcome Central. That's $5,895.
So we
So
have-
that's
That's
non-negotiable.
already none.
That's non-negotiable.
Okay.
Okay.
$5,895.
Okay.
Okay.
So what is, what are you doing, man?
22, 24, 32.
33,395. So that, you subtract that from 45. So it's- You have 12,382
12,200. Yeah.
left.
Well, I'm looking at the youth service, youth support, and not to be, I'm sure they do great things, but the number of, to be requesting $6,000 and they serve 44
Well,
student.
they also only got a score of 60
Yes,
Yeah.
in
yes.
comparison to the other one, so
Okay, so let's go to the mission and see how much you would like to do there.
Look at the number they've served this year.
The number they served this year has gone down dramatically because of the amount of food that they get. So I don't know how you want to handle that. Last year you gave them $5,120. This year they're requesting $6,000. They've had to use quite a bit of their money to buy food because
Yes.
they aren't getting it donated. But
And they've had to turn away a lot of people?
Yes.
they have.
Well, and this, I know that through the Welcome Central and sometimes Catholic Charities, if they have an abundance, like today I took 2 carloads full of food to the mission just because our pantry was overflowing. And some people who give to the homeless don't think that, who has a can opener and who can carry food in their backpack. They need individual servings of things that they can open easily and eat rather than something that you have to cook, like bread machine mix. Who can do that? And so we shared a lot, and we've been doing that recently, and I think that they're getting a few more just because we were able to share our abundance with them. And they were just overjoyed to get food today, 2 carloads full, which was lovely.
Yeah, and I think a meeting in May to talk about more collaborative food pantry
That would
work.
be wonderful.
And so I'm hosting a meeting here, well, actually at the community center, so that we can have discussions about that. And I think it's great that they've started working on that. We have Welcome Central and some of those other areas donating to them. But that aside, how would you like to handle funding the mission?
5,000? Keep it about the same? Or do we want to go up?
That's a
would
good
give him
round
a-
number
It's-
I can support. That's leaving us about 7,000.
Okay, so you're saying $5,000 there?
Yeah,
Okay.
at least.
So that leaves us with
That's a little more. than mission.
$7,000.
$7,000. We have
5,000.
the,
Guidance center and then our,
and the
Youth.
youth program,
What do we have left?
$7,000.
Okay.
five and two?
It's a good round number.
That's what I'd do.
2,000
For
to
the
youth
youth
services?
services, 2,000 for youth services,
And then 5,000 for the guidance center?
Yeah, it's-
as long as they change their application. What about Faith Christian, or we're not doing that one?
They had
Yeah.
an incomplete application.
And they
right.
want the budget
That's
for their whole church to
Church.
be paid for.
2,000,
I don't know.
5,000.
Well, I think that I would like to be able to work with them on their application next year. I'll make that offer to try and help them maybe modify how they do their application. And that would, and to do a fully complete application.
And just be specific rather than, what program within their church.
I think that probably and we're jumping ahead here, but I would like to talk to you about modifications to the application that you think would be helpful. And that's one of them, that perhaps we ask them specifically which program we'll be supporting.
Right.
And so that might be more helpful, I think.
Well, now that we've, we can close out number 5 now. Now that we've allotted,
Okay, so what I have, what? $382 left? Okay, so we have $382 left. Where would you like to attribute that?
To the
I'd
mission.
suggest giving it to the mission.
That's just what I was
Yeah.
going to say.
Okay, so they'd get $5,382. Okay,
So, I apologize, so with the, is it the youth? So we're going significantly down in what we're,
so we're dropping them by less than half.
okay.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they-
No, I got it, absolutely.
So what I have on my schedule, just to reiterate,
Bless
is
you.
St. Vincent's Clinic, $8,000. Catholic Charities, $5,000. CASA, $12,500. Youth Support Program, $2,000. The Mission, $5,382. Welcome Central, $5,895. The Guidance Center, $5,000.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I wrote down the wrong number. And then Women's Community Wide, $2,000. Okay. I just also want to, just as a side note, well, why don't you go ahead and finish the vote on that?
okay, do I have a motion to approve these allotments?
Well, I just have one question.
Okay.
Okay. So the guidance center score was only 40.33, and they're going to get almost all of what they requested, correct? They requested 5,100, we're going to give them 5. But the youth services, not that I was not impressed with their application, but they got a higher score, and they only got less than half. Is that
Well,
any, do you need to supply any explanation to the city commission or anything?
That's, the board needs to do that.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't that,
it was pretty clear on their application that they were serving less, the youth group. Their services went down, And it was like from 30, only 30 children or something of that
I'm
nature.
just looking at the scores in
Yeah.
relation to
Yeah.
how the money is, because we did the
Well,
scores.
weren't
The scores
we,
came from us.
Concerned about with the guidance center that the money was not being allocated for what, but that if we make that correction, that we're okay?
They were requesting money to help pay off a mortgage.
Right.
Right,
As
and so
opposed
what we're
to,
saying is, we'll
We're
give
going
you,
to give them a chance to change, to get it, to use it for utilities.
right,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
then
then,
reallocate money. Off you go, Margaret.
that was-
It wasn't Margaret,
it was his.
Charles, he's out of here. That is what the debate was about, was whether or not we would, as a board, want to do that. And I will say that the scores were,
Well, that's my point, is the lower score is getting almost what they want. So do you have to explain to the city commission if they say, hey, why is the youth services, why is this one getting, 40% of their request, but they're getting almost everything?
well, I would
Will the
say.
commission get
See,
this?
That's what,
No,
I
the
no.
commission will
So if
not
they
get
don't
the
know
Okay,
what our.
so they don't get the scores,
But they
okay.
will hear the recording if they so choose, because this is a recorded meeting.
well, and we also brought up the fact that the mental health services in this community are limited to the guidance center. And it's like, if there's one way we can help them keep their doors open to keep that service going, right now, mental health has to go to Atchison or St. Joe or Lawrence or Kansas City for any kind of care.
Right.
Yeah, I
And so-
think my point wasn't so much that as opposed to just the fact that the application of the money,
I
is it,
think what I would say to the commission is that despite the scoring, the board
Right.
felt this was an appropriate
distribution, yeah.
expenditure of money, because the board hadn't discussed whether or not, had not fully discussed whether or not we could provide money
Right.
for utilities instead in lieu of what they had requested.
Right, see, and I think that's why I scored it low, was for the debt relief was not what I thought, but, so with the understanding that the money could be allocated differently, if they would be willing to move that request, then I have no problem.
That's the only way we could do that.
Right.
Because in our application, it said rent or utilities.
And have you been in touch with them since they were here? So we don't know whether or not they're going to change it.
I'm
Take
sure
the time
they
to
have
change
that
it.
much in utilities.
My guess,
Oh,
my
yeah.
guess is they would welcome the funding.
I'm sure they
And
will.
they'll figure out, okay.
And that's similar to what the Catholic Charities, I mean, we just do towards their utilities and not their total operating budget.
Correct.
And youth services has, it has modified their program to have a specific line item.
Well, and youth services has not shown up for
Well,
the
they-
commission hearings 2 years in a row.
I feel our justification holds plenty of water in that respect, so I don't anticipate having to justify it any further.
Well, let's see, so I have a motion, do I still have a motion
You
to
still have a
approve?
motion.
Yep.
And is there a second to approve?
I second it.
All in favor of approving this allocation, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mike,
Yes.
first on the motion.
Didn't you move to accept?
I was first.
Or was it
Oh,
Dan?
no, it was,
Okay,
But I'd be happy to be
She
first.
You want to start over?
okay, we'll just start over. Do I have a motion to accept these allocations?
I never know.
I so move.
I so moved.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, and do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 5 is approved. 6, discuss changes, improvements for the agency review process. Staff comment?
I thought I would bring this up because this was the first year that we used this process. It's a little, it makes it a little more definitive in terms of how we're awarding funds in the scoring of agencies. One thought that I had was that it would be helpful for those agencies that have multiple meals to Welcome Central as opposed to some other part, or if they wanted us to fund a clothing center as opposed to some other part of their operations, we would be able to do that. That way, we would be able to get the budget for that one item broken out and see how our funding went to that particular item.
Any comment from the board or questions?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, except when we ask for their applications, it either has to be for rent or utilities.
Right, but the money that we would give them toward rent and utilities would be in support of
okay.
a particular project or projects,
Okay.
rather than
A general.
a general application. So it would be for their food pantry, or it would be for their youth support program. Maybe, and it might remain broad, and at which time they'd provide us their full budget. But for those agencies that are larger, like Catholic Charities, like Faith Christian, some of those others,
Awesome.
we would want to know specifically which part of their organization we would be.
I think that makes it better, a better understanding of where the money's going, and it maybe helps them be more accountable for what their requests are. They know better in their agency where the money needs to go to, or what services they provide. And just like the application for the whole church, well, it's hard to look at that saying, well, we can't break this out. You need to tell us what it is that you're really narrowing in on.
With thinking of that though, when you think of Catholic Charities or the St. Vincent Clinic, we know that it's a charitable organization straight across, or the mission, the Leavenworth Mission. In that case, I understand that when they put forth, they can share how many people they've reached and the service they provide. When a church applies, to me, that's when I want to know what specifically, because I don't want to fund a specific church. And so when we say Catholic Charities, we're going to help pay their utilities because we know their programs are all charitable. Does that make sense? When you look at that, the Faith Christian, and they said, this is our church budget, well, that to me was right there. I didn't want to do it because those are people. What part, maybe they have a daycare that they have. That to me would be where you would want to know specifically. But an organization like St. Vincent, which is a nonprofit, I guess they're all nonprofit. You know what, am I making
Well,
sense
they're
on
all
that?
nonprofits, otherwise they can't.
Right,
Right.
I didn't mean it like that, but I guess the idea being that we know St. Vincent is, has a huge need in our community. But when a church applies, then we're not sure what part of that is just, we're helping out with the Sunday supper for, any,
For their congregation.
Exactly. What specifically is that church doing?
Which is
CASA,
why
we
I think
understand.
we would want to know the specifics.
Right, but
that
in-
they are applying
Right.
for our funds.
But I'm not sure Catholic Charities or the others that we would need that, but an organization like that.
But you're going to have to
To ask them.
apply it
Yeah.
Same, yeah.
uniformly. So I think we would have to ask it uniformly.
Okay.
And if Catholic Charities felt like all of their missions were what we were funding, then they would give us their full budget
list.
and list out all of
Okay.
their missions, and they would report on those.
Okay,
If they are, say for example, Catholic Charities does some financial counseling, and they didn't want to include the financial counseling, then they could screen that off separately.
okay.
And just give us the budget for the rest of it, and we would look at that as those numbers that we would be looking for on our reports. Because I get monthly reports from each agency, and they have to be willing to do those reports
Okay.
as a condition of their funding, so, yes.
And if you break it like that, we could look at it and see across the entire community how much is going to that particular problem. And then you see all the people that are applying to it instead of trying to go in piecemeal. Should be a
And I
place we
think
can
like
sum that up.
We also want
Pantries.
to have them, on their application, approximate how many people they think they're going to serve that year with that. And it's still gonna be apples to oranges, because like St. Vincent Clinic, they count them the first time that they come to the clinic, but they may continue coming to the clinic all year long. Same thing with Catholic Charities, if they come in for food, they get counted that first time, but we have unduplicated counts, so even though they're getting food perhaps multiple times through the year,
They're only counted once.
they're only counted once.
Right.
And part of the thing that is an issue for the mission is that they consider themselves a food pantry, not emergency food, and so people come there regularly, every month perhaps. And so they only get counted once, even though they're there 12 times a year. So we, you, as a board, not we, would have to look at those numbers and not use them just cold, but also do some interpreting on how those numbers come about. And those are really good questions to ask them when they come to give talks. How often do these people come? How do you serve them? That kind of thing. And you're more than welcome to ask them questions on their operations as you see fit, because you're just doing due diligence toward that funding.
When are you hosting that meeting?
It usually is in,
You said you're hosting a meeting for those
Food banks.
food banks.
Food
Oh, that's
banks.
coordinating that.
I'm hosting a meeting on the 4th of May, if they accept my invitation. I sent out flyers this beginning of this week to say,
So it's going to speak to a collaborative effort.
I'm going to try and get it to go in that direction.
I got you.
First, we're going to just kind of get to know each other. Some of the food banks don't know each other. I think we'll look at everybody's mission and see how they're similar or different, because some of them are emergency food, like Catholic Charities, some of them are pantries, like Leavenworth Mission. Some of them are getting food, like Welcome Central, to serve a direct clientele. So, they have differing missions, even though they're all talking about food. And then, once we get past that part, then we're going to look at maybe how we're going to address some collaborative efforts so that we serve the community as efficiently as possible.
I think it's
Get
needed.
back to that first question I asked, how do we know what the total is for the community, the need? Is there a way to get that instead of piece parting it?
Well,
I don't
for
know.
those agencies that report to us, those agencies that we've been funding, we get that number as we go along. But for new agencies that are applying, they're going to have to approximate that number for us. And we're going to have to
See if there's a real need there.
see if the need is there and look for documentation of how many people they've served. And I see there being more and more need for this money rather than less. Because the way that the tax codes have changed, I think that giving to nonprofits may drop.
significantly. I was just having this conversation. Since you can't write it off.
And if that happens, I think they're going to look more for those grant sources.
Yes.
So you're going to have probably more applications. We're going to have to look at them and be judicious about how we want to spend the money to serve best the people in Leavenworth. So, which is what you do
So
every year.
literally,
Thank
it
you.
comes down to food, then mental health. I mean, I know it sounds kind of crass, but it
That's,
really comes down to, food,
Basic
then mental
needs,
health.
food,
Basic
shelter,
needs,
what, and
Yes.
social security.
Basic needs, and then you start talking about behavioral health, mental health, so,
Any other suggestions about the application, things that you think would be helpful that you didn't find on the applications as you reviewed them? No? Okay, well then, I think we're done with number 6. Thank you
Okay.
for your input.
And number 7, other matters correspondence.
One other matter that I'd like to cover with the board is just kind of a food for thought thing, and I mean that literally, not figuratively. I'd like to know your input. There's a group in town that is looking to try and get a grocery store established north.
Yeah.
And they're looking at in a variety of efforts, and at this point, they aren't firm enough that we can consider it really for funding. But there may come a point where they're looking either for funding for the location to be established, or funding for, they're looking at possibly doing a mobile grocery store that would serve basically the north area. I'd like to get some feedback from the board about how they feel about that kind of an effort being funded by CDBG funds, if that would be possible. It is something that we could fund outside of the public service agency dollars. If we were doing structure or,
I would support infrastructure improvements, like if they need some utility improvements, sidewalks. I'm not quite sure of their location or what they might need, but infrastructure improvements I'd be supportive of.
But it wouldn't touch the money that goes to,
public service agency.
yeah, not the 45, okay.
Now, I've done some research on it, and we could, depending on what they're looking for, we could fund it separately.
Was it my understanding that that Sunfresh that was out on Spruce closed because the rent was too high, that they couldn't, the people that were in there?
Oh, out on
Country Mart.
20th?
20th, yeah.
The Country Mart
Country
closed
Mart.
because
Country Mart,
the owner was, I think, on the East Coast and doubled or tripled the rent.
yeah,
And that was
and
why
they're
they
really
closed.
looking for something more
They want-
north than
Yeah.
20th.
Yes.
Right.
You know, because that's still hard for
That's-
people to
Right.
get to. So,
love an Aldi's.
I think they're
Oh, I
looking
love
for
Aldi's
something.
And the
then
need for
one
a
up
grocery
in the
store in
north.
this area
Uh-huh.
has been a long time. It's been
Yes.
discussed for a long time.
Well,
Ever since
Yeah.
England's went out.
I hate to jinx it, so I'm not gonna say a whole heck of a lot.
Okay.
And I haven't been to the meetings, so I don't really know where they are with these things. But I didn't want to go much further in discussions about possibilities without talking to my.
I-
And I'll also, if it comes to that point where we think we want to award monies, then I'll need to go talk to the commissioners as well. So,
I would support it.
Oh, I would
wholeheartedly.
too.
I would.
And it would just be an opportunity to have to be in charge of some part of you rather than begging for everything. If you did have a little money that you could afford, you could get to the store, and at least, to me, it just increases your dignity just a little bit when you have a little that you really want to be able to creatively get something that is yours.
well, and
Your
it's
choice.
anecdotal, but there
Your-
has been some discussion about people going to food pantries because they don't have the choices up north.
Right.
And they have a harder time getting.
With transportation.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Whole store is
So-
shut down down
The
there.
two cheapest, Walmart and Aldi's, are out on the periphery.
I'd love an Aldi's in the north.
Oh, man.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
that'd be awesome, but I don't see that happening. We'll see.
Maybe, let me ask.
All right, that's all I have to bring before the board. Does the board have anything else? Yes, Mr. Kemp.
We were just talking here, what about, remember the big store that was down in Spruce and, what was it?
Country
20th?
Mart.
Spruce and 20th?
Country
I mean,
Mart.
that's about, 3 blocks from me, and I woke up one morning, it was gone. Now, weren't they making enough profit? Were they not selling the right things? Were they?
Obviously, they didn't make enough profit to
Paid.
absorb the increase that they were gonna get in
But,
rent.
yeah, it was a mess in the store.
They were going to raise the rent to, it's just rumors that I heard, but quite a bit.
Who's the they?
Double.
The
The people
property.
who own that property. They did not
Absentee
own-
landlord.
They did not own the property. They were renting.
No, I know, but who owned the property?
I don't know.
An absentee landlord.
Okay, who jacked the price up and ran them out, basically.
Yeah.
Thinking they could get somebody else, another tenant.
It was never it just didn't, I live right there on 20th and Spruce and Shannon Woods, and I would not go there by choice. It was just not a very,
I know, was
Yeah.
right up over the hill.
Yeah, so I think that.
Never thought it was very well presented as
Maintained,
a,
no.
maintained and presented as a.
And the prices, yeah, and that's the best, too.
Prices were high.
And I'm sure the people that were just great people, it's just, the whole package wasn't there.
And so, really, what we're looking at is more what they call a food desert, this northern part of the city that has no grocery store
Right.
at all. except for
Denny's Market,
Denny's.
right,
Denny's
right.
Market, and that doesn't provide a full range. So, okay, well, if that comes, if that works its way more forward, I will come back to the board and we'll discuss it for perhaps next year or the following year
Sounds good.
or something.
Sounds good. Great.
Okay. If nobody on the board has anything else, I move we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned till next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still feel we got